On September 8, 2017, Don Williams passed away quietly at the age of 78 after a long struggle with emphysema. There were no dramatic headlines, no emotional final concert beneath bright stage lights, and no elaborate farewell. His passing came with the same calmness that had defined his entire career. For a man whose voice had carried so many timeless country love songs, the quietness of his departure almost felt surprising. How could someone whose music reached so deeply into people's lives leave the world with so little noise? Don Williams had always been something of a paradox in popular music. He never burst onto the scene with explosive energy, nor did he rely on a flashy stage presence or a powerful, theatrical voice. Instead, he stood tall and calm before the microphone, often barely moving while performing. His deep baritone voice carried a quiet sincerity that made audiences feel as if they were hearing a private conversation rather than attending a concert. That simplicity helped transform him into one of the most respected voices in country music. Songs like Tulsa Time and I Believe in You traveled far beyond the American South, reaching listeners from Texas to Europe. Yet behind that calm and steady public image was a life shaped by hardship, personal loss, and difficult decisions. A boy raised in a working-class Texas family eventually became known as the gentle giant of country music, a man whose quiet personality concealed a lifetime of experiences rarely discussed in public. The deeper one looks into his story, the more complex the life behind those peaceful love songs becomes. In the small town of Floydada in West Texas, daily life followed the rhythm of an agricultural community. Cotton fields stretched across the horizon, and dusty roads connected farms scattered across the land. Trucks carrying harvests moved through town early in the morning, leaving trails of red dust behind them. Families woke with the rising sun and returned home in the evening when porch lights began glowing outside modest houses along the streets. It was in this setting that Donald Ray Williams was born on May 27, 1939. He was the youngest of three brothers in the family of James Andrew Jim Williams and Lavetta Mae Lambert Williams. Life in their home was simple and grounded in everyday routines. Adults worked long hours while children played outside until dinner was ready. Evenings often ended in the small living room where a warm yellow light fell across wooden chairs and a small table pushed against the wall. When Don was still young, the family moved to Portland, Texas, a coastal town near Corpus Christi. The environment there was very different from the dry plains of West Texas. Instead of cotton fields, there were fishing boats resting in the harbor and roads running along the shoreline. Sea winds carried the smell of salt through the streets, and children spent afternoons running across sandy schoolyards after classes ended. It was in this coastal town that Don Williams grew up, gradually becoming familiar with the quiet rhythm of life in a small community. Music began entering the household through his mother. Lavetta Mae often sat in the living room with a guitar resting on her lap, playing traditional folk and country melodies while the family gathered nearby. The sound of her guitar filled the room during the evenings. Dawn would sit and watch as her fingers moved along the fretboard, changing chords with ease. Eventually, she placed the instrument in his hands. At first, his fingers moved awkwardly across the strings as he tried a few simple chords, listening carefully to the vibration of each note. Over time, the guitar became a constant presence in the house. Don practiced the chords his mother showed him and gradually began experimenting with new combinations. Those early lessons in the living room became the beginning of a musical path that no one yet fully understood. As he entered his teenage years, the guitar followed him beyond the house. He began bringing it to gatherings with friends around town. Small bands formed in garages, school halls, and backyards. Someone would set up a basic drum kit, another would plug an amplifier into the nearest outlet, and guitars would be tuned under the warm glow of overhead lights. The members of these early bands changed frequently. Some friends left while new ones joined. Weekend performances usually took place in small community halls where the stage was nothing more than a wooden floor with a single microphone at the center. A few dozen people would gather to listen while the group played songs popular on the radio. They performed whatever the audience wanted to hear: country music, folk, early rock and roll, and rockabilly. One song ended and another began immediately afterward. Shoes tapped against the floor while drums kept the rhythm steady. At Gregory Portland High School, Don Williams was rarely seen without a guitar nearby. After classes, he and his friends practiced in the band room or sometimes outside in the schoolyard. As the afternoon sunlight faded, a small amplifier sat on the ground while the guitar connected through a microphone. The young musicians tried songs they had recently heard on the radio. Local diners kept their radios playing all day, broadcasting new music from Nashville and beyond. Those melodies quickly found their way into the group's rehearsals. In 1958, Williams graduated from Gregory Portland High School. The guitar remained a constant part of his life. At the same time, his family experienced several changes. His parents eventually divorced, and his mother remarried more than once. These transitions shaped Don's early years and exposed him to the complicated dynamics of family life. Then, in 1963, tragedy struck the family. Don's brother Kenneth died in an electrical accident after coming into contact with a live power line. Kenneth was only 29 years old. His sudden death left a deep absence in the household. The loss was handled privately within the family, shared quietly among those closest to them. After high school, Don Williams entered another stage of life when he served 2 years in the United States Army Security Agency. Military life followed strict schedules and discipline, with clearly structured routines that contrasted sharply with the relaxed pace of his hometown. When his service ended, he returned to civilian life and worked several different jobs. Over the next few years, he was a salesman, a bread delivery driver, a bill collector, and an employee in a furniture store. During the day, he worked long hours loading trucks, delivering goods, and assisting customers. In the evenings, however, the guitar returned to his hands. He played at small gatherings and local performances whenever possible. The pattern of those years was simple: working during the day and making music at night. This routine continued throughout the small towns of Texas where he lived. Music was not yet a career, but rather a quiet companion that followed him everywhere. A major change came in 1964 when Williams met Susan Taylor and Lofton Klein in the growing Texas folk music scene. The three began practicing together, experimenting with 3-part vocal harmonies around Williams's acoustic guitar. During these early rehearsals, Williams provided the deep baritone foundation beneath the other voices while maintaining rhythm on the guitar. The trio practiced repeatedly until their harmonies aligned perfectly.